Bienvenue mes amis. Welcome to another adventure in the French language. And what adventure is that today? Why, it's the adventure of French contractions. Let's talk a little bit about English contractions first. When we form contractions in English, what we do is we take two words, we bring them together, and then we leave some of the letters out and put it in apostrophe to show that we've left those letters out, so that we can bring can and not together and we come up with can't. We bring did and not together and we come up with didn't. We bring they and have together and we come up with they've. And there are all kinds of contractions in English. I'll bet if we sat down and just started listing all of them, we could probably come up with 100 or so. There are a lot of contractions in English. Well, the French concept of contractions is somewhat different than that. In French, contractions are not formed with apostrophes. And there are not 100 or so contractions in French. As a matter of fact, there are only 4. And the way the French form contractions is they bring two words together and form one new word without an apostrophe. And let me show you the words that they use in which they form contractions. They form contractions between two sets of words. The first set is le and les. Both of these are definite articles. They both mean the. Le is used for masculine singular nouns. Les is used for masculine or feminine plural nouns. The other set of words that the French use to make contractions are the words à, which means at or to, and the word de, which means of or from. Okay, let's see how the contractions are formed. In French, whenever you have à followed immediately by le, in other words, they're right next to each other, the French form a contraction. And a and le become the new word o, A-U, pronounced o. When a is followed directly by les, they form a contraction and they become aux, also pronounced o. When de is followed immediately by le, they form a contraction, and that is du. When de is followed immediately by les, they form a contraction, and the new word is de. So here are your 4 contractions. A plus le becomes o. A plus les becomes o with an X. De plus le becomes du, and de plus les becomes de. That means that you will never see a and le next to each other in a French sentence. You will never see a and les next to each other in a French sentence. You will never see de and le next to each other, nor will you see de and les next to each other. Instead, you will see these contractions. Let's look at some examples. Let's use the sentence, I am eating at the cafe. All right? Je mange à le café. Let's see if we can make these a little bit bigger. The better to see you with. Is that better? I'll bet we can even go one more. Let's try that. Ah, much better. Okay. Je mange à le café. I am eating at the cafe. Put a period. Well, that looks like a perfectly legitimate sentence. Everything's in the right order. All the words are right. But the issue we have is we have this a and le next to each other. And as I said before, you will not see that in a French sentence because whenever a is followed immediately by le, they form a contraction. So we're going to get rid of that. What's the contraction? Well, a and le make o. So we're going to put in o instead. And now our sentence is, je mange au café. I am eating at the cafe. All right? Very good. That sentence is now correct because we use the contraction for a and le. All right? Let's try another one. Let's say he is speaking to the girls. Il parle à les filles. He is speaking to the girls. Again, everything looks fine. All the words are correct. They're in the proper order. Our only issue is that we have this a and les next to each other. And you will never see that in a French sentence because a and les become aux. And now we will say il parle aux filles. He is speaking to the girls. All right? Let's try some contractions now with de. Let me give you some examples. Okay. Let's say the sentence, we are calling from the school. In other words, we're getting on the phone and we're calling from the school. Let's say the high school. All right? Nous téléphonons, we are calling from the, and the word for high school, of course, is lycée. Nous téléphonons de le lycée. All right? Perfectly fine sentence. Everything spelled correctly. Every word is right. Okay? The only issue we have, this de le. That does not exist in the French language because de and le, when le is followed directly, when de is followed directly by le, they're going to form the contraction du. Nous téléphonons du lycée. We are calling from the high school. All right? Let's try a question now just to mix it up. All right? Let's say, do you like the teacher's cars? All right. Now remember, in French, to show possession, we have to do a kind of a roundabout because the French wouldn't say, do you like the teacher's cars? They would say, do you like the cars of the teachers? All right. It's just their way of expressing possession. So, tu aimes les voitures? Do you like the cars of the teachers? Tu aimes les voitures de les profs? All right. Again, good sentence. Everything's right. Everything's spelled right. The grammar's right. Except we have this issue of de and les. Les cannot directly follow de. When these two words come together like this, they form the contraction des. Whoops. Des. So we have tu aimes les voitures des profs? All right. And there's an example of all four of the French contractions being used in sentences. All right. So whenever you're looking at the phrases at the, to the, of the, or from the, you need to check because there's a possibility you are going to have a contraction. Now, what you also should notice here is that there is no contraction made between a and la, the feminine singular definite article, nor is there a contraction made between a and l apostrophe. In those cases, we just leave them alone. Those words do not form contractions, so they can exist side by side. You can have a la, you can have a l apostrophe. No contractions are made. Likewise, there is no contraction made between de and la, and there is no contraction made between de and l apostrophe. Those can remain side by side without any issue. So it's only le and les that we need to be concerned about as far as contractions go. Now there is one other of our vocabulary words I want you to be aware of that often takes a contraction, and here's why. The verb is jouer. All right? Jouer, which means to play. Okay? But the verb jouer is often followed by a contraction, and here's why. The expression jouer is used to talk about to play a game or sport. So in other words, in French, I just don't play a game, I play at a game. All right? Or I play at a sport. I have to use that preposition a with jouer if I'm talking about playing a sport. Likewise, the expression jouer de is used to talk about playing an instrument. Okay? So if I say jouer de, you know I'm talking about playing an instrument. That preposition de has got to go before the name of the instrument. Let me give you some examples here. Let's talk about Mark plays soccer. Marc joue. Now, I can't just say le football. In English, that's what I would say. Marc joue le football. And there wouldn't be an issue. But remember, in French, if you're talking about a game or a sport, you have to have that preposition a there. So it'd be Marc joue à le football. But notice what we have here. We have this a and le next to each other. They don't exist side by side. They form a contraction. So I would have to say Marc joue au football. Okay? So that is jouer à, to play a game or sport. Okay? Now, let's look at the next one. I'll start down here. Jouer de equals to play an instrument. All right. Let's talk about playing the piano. Let's say a very simple sentence, I play the piano. Je joue. Now in English I would just say le piano. Je joue le piano. And we'd be done with it. But we can't do that in French because when you talk about playing an instrument, you have to use the preposition de. So I would have to say, je joue de le piano. And oops, once again, we have a de and le next to each other. Can't have that. We've got to change those to du. So in French, I would say, je joue du piano. I play the piano. All right? Well, that's about all I can say for contractions in French. Remember, they form contractions by taking two words, putting them together to form one new word. And there are only four. O with an X, du, and de. And please remember, occasionally you will run into verbs like jouer that take the prepositions a or de, and whenever a verb takes a preposition a or de, there is a very good chance you are going to have to deal with contractions as you use that verb in sentences. So just be aware of that. And I can see my time is almost up, so I better say au revoir, and I will see you soon for another adventure in French.